My cousin shoved me into traffic, so I got my revenge years later. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My cousin smiled at my evidence and finally stopped smiling. I wish I could say I felt triumphant in that moment, like a movie hero delivering the last line, but what I felt first was the throb in my left knee, the old pain that wakes up when it rains or when I'm angry. I'm Alex, 29, steady as a metronome when I'm working nights as an IT tech in a hospital basement, and jittery as a hummingbird when family comes up. My job is simple on paper. Keep the systems alive so the nurses don't have to chart by flashlight, but it becomes holy at 3 a.m. when a crash cart needs a barcode and a scanner suddenly dies. I don't make a lot, but I make sure no one flatlines because the server did. That matters to me. It never mattered to Dylan. Dylan likes stages. He's 31 now and built like a billboard, all grin and slogans and a startup logo you see on sponsored posts. He's been practicing that smile since we were kids, and he learned adults clap for audacity. "You're really going to do this?" he asked, resting his fingers on the marble like they were bored. The party murmured behind him. Aunt Mara's backyard filled with seltzer cans, fairy lights, and the polite sounds of people who keep their voices low while they eavesdrop. "Do what?" I asked, even though we both knew the answer. Nor, my best friend since freshman year, leaned in the hallway pretending to text, ready if I stumbled. I tapped the tablet once to wake the screen. The first frame froze on the crosswalk at Northgate High. "So this is what you've been doing," he said, trying to turn pity into a weapon. "Screenshots and old paper? It's been 14 years, man. 14 years since the crosswalk at Northgate High where he leaned close and hissed, 'Bet you can't beat the light,' right before his palm planted between my shoulder blades. I remember the color of the Toyota that slammed its brakes, silver, the grip of a stranger's hands on my jacket, warm, and the taste of copper. The police wrote it up as a misstep. Our family retold it as Clumsy Alex, the kid who always fell upward. Dylan won class clown a week later, and I learned to sit through Sunday dinners with a smile that didn't belong to me. I stand now in Aunt Mara's perfect kitchen, marble whites and lemon polish, a party murmuring in the backyard where a tent is strung with fairy lights. Nor waits in the hallway pretending to text, her presence like a hidden anchor. On the island between us lies a tablet and a manila folder. The tablet holds a grainy clip from an old flip phone. The folder holds copies of billing codes, claim numbers, a school security log with a timestamp that hates Dylan's memory. "You don't want this going public," he whispers, which means he's terrified it will. "I want safety," I say, surprised by how calm I sound. "For me, for anyone you dare shove next. I'm not here to brawl. I'm here to protect the kid I used to be, and anyone who might stand where I stood." Then the tablet pinged, and the backyard tent lights flickered ominously. Dylan and I were the kind of cousins who looked related only in photographs. Same dark eyes, same crooked smile, none of the same wiring. He collected people like trophies, camp counselors, teachers, anyone with a watchful gaze. I collected instructions, spare parts, and the quiet relief of finishing a task without anyone noticing. Growing up, he'd slap my neck and laugh. "Relax, Lex," then snatch the last piece of cake, then charm Aunt Mara into thinking he was sharing when he handed me the crumbs. Adults mistook momentum for character. I mistook silence for safety. At 12, he switched my science fair labels so my algae tank looked dead and his glitter volcano sputtered triumphantly. At 14, he told a girl I liked that I kept a notebook full of her handwriting. I did, because I was practicing calligraphy. She cried anyway. He learned early that humiliation is the same volume as laughter when people are close enough. I learned to retreat into tech, the logic of scripts and the sanity of logs. Our family rewarded shine. "Smile, Dylan," Aunt Mara would say. "You light up the room," as if the rest of us were furniture. My parents worked shifts and said little. I sat at those lemon-polished tables and listened to relatives debate sports, stocks, and how boys will be boys. Dylan would jab my shoulder and say, "Still fixing printers, Lex?" Last Thanksgiving, he clinked his glass and announced he'd been invited to keynote a startup conference, adding, "Maybe Alex can debug the slideshow." People laughed like it was good cardio. I smiled because my mother needed me to. 2 weeks before tonight, he sent a group text after his company raised funding, W for the team. Then to me privately, "You should thank me for teaching you resilience." It wasn't a joke. He believed it, and the belief slid under my skin like a splinter that refused to rise. That splinter turned to steel when Noor asked, "Have you ever written down the timeline?" She said it casually, like suggesting I try a new route to work, but I felt the room tilt. I had 1,000 fragments. The silver Toyota, the screech, the bandaged knee, Aunt Mara's voice smoothing the air. I never put them in order because order might turn fragments into a blade. I opened a blank document and began with the word shove. I typed the date, the time, the weather, the shoes I wore, the text I got later from Dylan. Wild day, huh? I mapped every Sunday dinner after, noting each joke that sealed the story like caulk. Noor's eyebrow lifted as she watched me line up years that never wanted to stand straight. I felt every petty memory sharpen into a blade aimed at truth. The crosswalk at Northgate sits between the football field and the strip mall, where we used to buy neon slushies and feel adult for carrying change. It was early spring, the kind of afternoon that smells like damp rubber and cafeteria pizza. I was 15 and wearing the off-brand sneakers my dad said were practically the same. And Dylan was beside me in his varsity jacket he borrowed from a friend on the actual team. "Bet you can't beat the light," he said, close enough that his breath tickled my ear. I remember thinking, not today, not with the backpack digging into my shoulder. Then his palm landed between my shoulder blades, and my foot hit the paint. A silver Toyota lurched, tires screaming, a chorus of horns exploded, and the world blinked sideways. I don't remember the impact, but I remember the sound of my backpack zipping across asphalt, and the taste of pennies when I woke up blinking under supermarket fluorescents because the driver had hauled me to the curb. "You slipped," Dylan told the woman holding my head. "He always trips like that." The EMT said, "Don't move." And I learned to obey voices that kept me alive. At the ER, I watched ceiling tiles scroll by like boring sky. An X-ray, an MRI, a doctor who said, MCL sprain, contusions, possible concussion, and a bill that would breed smaller bills for months. Aunt Mara arrived before my mother and rubbed circles on Dylan's shoulder like he was the patient. "Boys," she said to the nurse, "you know how they roughhouse." My mother sat very still, a folded storm, and asked me if I was dizzy. I was, but not from the concussion. The officer scribbled a report, pedestrian misstep, driver avoided collision, no citation. Dylan signed something as a witness, and then made a joke to a candy striper about my sock not matching. When I finally stood, the room tilted, and Dylan held my elbow like a gentleman escort. "See," he said, loud enough for a nearby volunteer to hear, "I've got you." In photos from those weeks, I'm smiling. The brace is hidden under loose pants. The swelling is invisible in jeans. I went to physical therapy twice a week. The receptionist knew my name by week 3. The ice machine burned like courage. At home, I got a lecture about paying attention when crossing streets, and a brochure about teen safety, and a family resolution to be more careful. Careful, which meant quiet. Careful, which meant no one asked why Dylan's handprint lived in my back. Insurance helped, but not completely. My parents took a second job temporarily and never mentioned it again. Dylan started a running joke about my light feet, how I float. He turned my bruise into folklore, and I learned how folklore can bury a body while everyone claps. I signed the discharge papers while Dylan rehearsed his alibi. Years pass until memories become furniture. You stop seeing the couch's frayed arm. Then one Tuesday, the arm scratches you. The scratch was a photo tag from our 10-year reunion. Someone uploaded an album called Hallway Heroes with a dozen blurry candidates, including one of Dylan and 3 old teammates in front of the Northgate trophy case. They're laughing, red cups, chin up, and Dylan's caption is a smug little grenade. "Bet you can't beat the light. Some things never change." The comments were all LOL savage and classic Dylan, and I felt my jaw tighten like a jammed drawer. I told myself it was nothing, a recycled joke. But something about the timestamp felt wrong. The photo said it was posted at 11:08 p.m., but the reunion's official itinerary ended at 10:30 and the trophy case lights were already cut in the background. I know because Noor and I had walked by the dark hallway when we left. I zoomed in and noticed the reflection in the glass. A sliver of screen glow in Dylan's hand, the angle like he was copying a caption from somewhere else. Noor said, "Correlation isn't causation, but it can be breadcrumbs." I rolled my eyes, but the itch wouldn't leave. That night, I dug out an old shoebox of school stuff and found a flattened lanyard from freshman year, a Spirit Week schedule, and a wrinkled handout about crosswalk safety with Mr. Jameson's doodle mustache on it. I don't know why I kept it. I smoothed it out like it would confess. The next day, Aunt Mara posted a throwback of Dylan pushing a grocery cart with me riding in it when we were 8. Always daring, she wrote. Always careful with his little brother cousin. The comments chorused hearts. I stared at the word careful until it sprouted teeth. When something wants to be seen, it knocks twice. The second knock came from my knee. After a long shift rebooting a medication cabinet server, a storm rolled through and the ache bloomed hot and floral. I sat in the stairwell and pressed my palm into old tissue and heard Dylan's whisper like it was happening again. The ache, the caption, the reflection, 3 taps on a door I'd nailed shut. I finally texted Nor, "What would you do if the shove was never an accident?" She replied in less than a minute. I'd stop guessing and start gathering. I closed my eyes and saw the crosswalk's white bars like rib bones. I pressed save on the photo, saved the comments, and saved my hesitation for last, because hesitation corrodes evidence. The caption timestamp laughed at me like a clock that lies. I used to want to be a physical therapist, which is funny now given how the waiting room music followed me like a curse. The injury meant I missed tryouts for track, lost my after-school job, and tanked a semester of grades I was supposed to use like stepping stones. College will understand, my counselor said, and some admitted it did, but scholarship committees are polite carnivores. Dylan ascended anyway, gliding from prank prince to marketing minor to someone giving talks about disruption. I rebuilt in smaller tiles, community college, night shifts, certificates that meant I could keep machines breathing. It wasn't glamorous, but I could trace my work to a living patient, and that made my lungs feel bigger. The cost, besides the medical debt, was a family narrative cemented in Sunday sauce. Dylan is bold, Alex is delicate. If I contradicted it, Aunt Mara's eyebrows would knit like a net. "We're so grateful the car stopped," she'd say, and everyone would nod. And I became the boy who was saved, not the boy who was shoved. Years later, the debt finally shrank to something that didn't hiss every time the mail arrived, but the interest had migrated to my spine, a posture bent around a story I didn't write. Nor, who knows how to make spreadsheets sing, sat with me at my kitchen table one evening while the radiator clicked. "Let's list impacts," she said, and typed as I spoke. Lost wages, therapy sessions, knee brace replacements, the summer internship I couldn't take. She added a column called narrative cost, and we both stared at it like a dare. Meanwhile, Dylan kept posting grind set reels from hotel lobbies with ferns taller than me. He liked to joke that I fixed tiny problems, and at Christmas he told me my job was one software patch away from obsolete, then asked me to troubleshoot his Bluetooth speakers. I did it because my mother asked nicely, and I am weak for her sigh of relief. But my patience is not infinite. It is a reservoir with a dam I don't examine. The caption crack lodged a pebble in the dam. A week later, I called Aunt Mara to ask if she remembered who else witnessed the crosswalk. "Oh, honey," she said, soft and knife bright. "We put that to bed so long ago. It was a misstep. You were running. Dylan tried to grab you." I hung up and Nor said, "She's rehearsed that sentence." Rehearsals are tells. The dam creaked. Nor's next question shook something I'd spent years pretending was permanent. "Do you still have your old phone?" Nor asked, like she was asking about leftovers. I did, in a drawer with stray chargers and a coin with a square hole I used to rub before exams. The battery was swollen like it had inhaled and never exhaled. We found an adapter and coaxed it awake long enough to drag out brittle text logs. Most were nonsense, memes made of impact font and pixels, but a thread from the night of the accident kept catching my eye. A text from Dylan at 6:21 p.m. "Wild day, huh?" Followed by, "Bet you can't beat the light." Winky face, sent at 3:07 p.m., exactly 8 minutes before the police report timestamped the 3:15 p.m. call. I had never noticed the earlier message. The phone was probably in my backpack. I took a screenshot and felt my skin vibrate. Nor frowned. "Out of context, it's a joke. In context, it's intent," she said. "We need more." She suggested an insurance records request. "Your parents' policy might still have archival claim notes," she said. "Adjusters love notes." The word adjuster made my stomach drop, Bureaucracy terrifies until it becomes a ladder. I called the insurer and asked how to obtain historical claim documentation as the claimant. They mailed me a form that smelled like printers and apology. While we waited, Nor channeled her inner librarian and dug up a list of public databases, county court filings, municipal police logs, and the school district's retention policy. That's how I learned Northgate kept security footage for 30 days back then, less if the system glitched, which it often did. The footage was gone, but incident logs weren't. A clerk named Mariah emailed me a scan of the student incident intake from that week. In the margin, a counselor had scribbled, "peer pressure," with a question mark so faint you could blink and miss it. Nora's eyebrows launched toward her hairline. "Someone saw something," she said. I felt cold and strangely seen. The insurance packet arrived next. Claim number, CPT billing codes, denial letters, and adjuster note. Witness Dylan H. Says PT tripped trying TO run red signal. 3 words underlined twice. Bet you can't. My hand shook. Nurse steadied it. "This is not closure," she said. "It's corroboration." I printed everything and slid it into a folder the color of stop signs. I also made digital copies, backups to the backups, a habit from the server room where power fails when it's most expensive. Then a new message surfaced from a forgotten email. Northgate dares at a burner account that had sent a chain of dares that spring. One subject line read, "Light Runner." The sender's handle made my pulse hammer like it remembered the curb. Nor says patterns don't appear. They're revealed by consistent questions. So we built a list of questions that would make Dylan's charm irrelevant. Where were you? Who did you text? What did money do after? We filed a records request for the police dispatch audio and learned the first caller mentioned a shove before correcting herself to a slip, which is a correction you make when someone's mom is suddenly at your elbow. We pulled yearbook PDFs and cross-referenced prank club rosters against anonymous Northgate dares posts scraped from an old forum. The dares had a signature, an extra ellipsis like a paused laugh. Dylan's old Gmail, recovered from a breach check site, used that same ellipsis in drafts. Correlation is not causation, but Nor circled it anyway. I tracked down Mr. Jameson, now retired, who remembered pulling Dylan and 2 friends from the hallway the week before the accident. They were betting candy bars on ridiculous things, he said, then caught himself. Boys. He emailed a scanned detention slip from his basement printer. The date was 2 days before my fall. I called Mariah at District Records again and asked if there'd been other crosswalk incidents that month. She sent a spreadsheet with 3 near misses. Laughing kids, sprinting lights, a whispered rumor that someone was filming reactions. Nor's mouth went thin. He needed footage, she said. I stared at the ceiling and remembered the glass reflection in the trophy case, screen glow on skin. We visited the strip mall where it happened and found the dry cleaner still run by a woman named Teresa who remembered the driver. Shaking like a leaf, she said. And the other boy, your cousin? Kept saying, "He's clumsy, he always runs." Teresa signed a brief statement on receipt paper because her pen was running out. Back home, I laid everything on my table. Texts, claim notes, detention slips, near-miss logs, receipts. The pattern solidified into a shape uglier than a prank, a ladder of dares escalating toward spectacle. We searched Dylan's socials for bet, light, runner, wager, finding a private Twitch clip where a younger Dylan narrates challenges at crosswalks. Audio warped, but cadence unmistakable. Nor froze the frame. The banner overlay read, $50 if he beats the light. The username was masked, but the laugh wasn't. The voice on the clip laughed exactly like Dylan when he won anything. What he was hiding wasn't a single shove. It was a scoreboard. The burner Northgate's inbox led to an old prepaid account that had once received PayPal transfers labeled pool and bets, small amounts that multiplied into weekends of wings and sneakers. We traced one PayPal note, LR bonus, to a friend of Dylan's who now sells real estate and posts drone videos of roofs. He answered my message with 3 ellipses, then, "We were idiots." He wouldn't say more without a lawyer, but he did say less. That Dylan always ran the pot because he could sell the dare, and that I happened to be there. Happened. Like weather. I called the driver of the silver Toyota, number found through an ancient paper trail, and a kind DMV clerk who repeated rules twice and expected me to follow them. The driver, MS. Alvarez lives 2 towns over and still apologizes for breaking late even though she stopped in time. There was a boy laughing, she said quietly. And I thought, this is a game to him. She also remembered a phone outstretched like a periscope. The mini twist? The dares weren't just clout, they were monetized. A campus novelty shop had once offered gift cards for viral clips, and an older boy bragged he had a buyer who loved near-miss videos. Nor found a cached forum thread where a user named MKittyKing described harmless thrills at crosswalks and linked to anonymized uploads. The video platforms are gone, but the ad payment screenshots live in amber. One screen shows a payout the week of my accident, $380. 72. That's a brace and 2 PT sessions, I said, and my voice sounded like it was crawling through a tunnel. The stakes widened. This wasn't embarrassment, it was exploitation. Worse, the thread mentioned, one almost went wrong, followed by a grinning emoji that isn't supposed to make you cold. Nur squeezed my shoulder. This is intent tied to profit, she said, which means the story isn't just yours. It means my silence kept a business model intact. My ribs felt tight. On bad nights I used to whisper, maybe he was just stupid. Now I had to say, he was deliberate. And deliberation stains. If money flowed, I had to follow it to whoever kept paying. There's a difference between revenge and accountability. One looks backward, the other builds a safer tomorrow. I needed the second, and I needed it to survive lawyers and relatives. Nor drew a triangle on a sticky note. Evidence, witnesses, venue. We need all three, she said, and backups in case one leg kicks. Evidence. We organized files into a clean chain, screenshots with metadata, notarized statements from Teresa and MS. Alvarez, the adjuster note, and the Twitch clip with its original link crawled from an archive. Witnesses. Mr. Jameson agreed to speak if he could read his old detention note into a recorder. The real estate friend, under pressure, sent me a voice memo. We were betting, okay? He said, bet you can't beat the light. Like, constantly. Venue. Public but contained, not social media warfare. Nor suggested community mediation with a neutral facilitator. Some cities host restorative sessions for harm cases. I called a center downtown and asked if they could host a session addressing reckless endangerment and long-term impact, with counsel present. They could, if both parties agreed. Dylan would never agree, or so I thought. Then we remembered Aunt Mara's obsession with appearances. If I framed it as closure meeting, she might drag Dylan by his reputation. I wrote a careful invitation, plain language, no adjectives, emphasizing safety and the chance to correct the record. I also retained attorney Patel for an hour to review exposure risks and help draft a brief that could become a police addendum if necessary. Patel was clinical. What you have shows a pattern and motive. Don't confront him until the venue is secured and records are duplicated off-site. I uploaded every file to a cloud account Nor controlled and stored a copy on a flash drive in my hospital locker behind the emergency labeler. I rehearsed what I'd say, not vengeance, not screaming, just a straight line through years of fog. But at night, in that hour when floors hum and elevators yawn, I heard a younger me asking whether I was about to become the spectacle. Nor's text at 2:14 a.m. saved me from that version. Accountability is not theater, it's lighting. We booked the mediation room. Then Aunt Mara replied with a suspiciously quick yes. The weekend before the session, Aunt Mara hosted a cookout that felt like an audition tape for normalcy. Grill smoke, lawn games, curated playlists that said we've always been happy. Dylan walked over with 2 beers and the kind of hug you give to cameras. Truce, he murmured, breath warm, tone silky. I don't want drama next week. He lowered his voice. Family first, right? Nor hovered within eyesight like a lifeguard pretending to sunbathe. Family is why we're meeting, I said. He smirked. Or because you like attention. He tilted his head toward a cluster of cousins. You always wanted to be the main character. I laughed, short and ugly. I wanted to be unheard. He leaned in closer. Delete the files, Alex. I'm serious. His pupils were pinholes, his voice softened. I was a kid. You were clumsy. We've both moved on. It should have sounded like closure. It sounded like rehearsed lines fed to him by a brand manager. Then he tried a new tactic. What if I made it right privately? He mentioned money like it was a towel he could toss over the past. I imagined taking it and feeling dirty forever. It's not about money, I said, and watched him recalibrate. He added a threat in a tone that could pass as concern. People might bring up your old stuff too. You sure you want that? My old stuff is bills and a limp on rainy days. His old stuff has usernames. He stepped back, smile stitched on. Think about it, he said. Nor slid beside me with 2 lemonades like a stage cue. You good? She asked. I nodded, then noticed the fairy lights flicker as the sun dipped, like they were waiting for a cue. Dylan clinked glasses with an uncle and laughed too loudly. I remembered the Twitch laugh, the forum ellipses, the adjuster's underline. The week had the stretched feeling of a drum before a strike. That night, a text buzzed from an unknown number. Careful what you dig up. Some holes cave in. Nor responded from my phone with a period and screenshot. We traced the number to a VoIP app. The lawn smelled like lighter fluid and rain. Then Dylan's real number called, and he said 4 words that chilled me. For words, Dylan had said, let's handle it privately. I said no, and the pause after my refusal sounded like a speaker unplugged mid-song. We kept the mediation on the calendar. Tuesday, 6 p.m., the Restorative Justice Center's second-floor room with a glass wall that faced the atrium. It wasn't a courtroom, which mattered. I didn't want a gavel, I wanted light. Nor and I arrived early with rolling cases like sales reps for inconvenient truths. The facilitator, Ms. Lynn, walked us through ground rules. We speak one at a time. We name harm specifically. We request outcomes we can actually do. If the conversation escalates, we pause, she said, palms open. Attorney Patel sat quietly in the corner, legal pad neat enough to count as a threat. I tested the projector, then tested the backup, then tested the backup to the backup, an HDMI stick that Noor joked I'd hide in a houseplant if allowed. At 5:57, Aunt Mara swept in like a fundraiser in motion, perfume green and expensive. Dylan followed, blazer unbuttoned, smile already set. Thank you for agreeing to this, I said, because politeness keeps me from shaking. We're here for closure, Aunt Mara announced, as if setting agenda from a podium. Ms. Lynn nodded. Our goal is truth and repair, she said. Dylan leaned back and twirled a pen like he was hosting a podcast. So, he began, let's talk about how memory works. He glanced at Patel's pad and flinched. We're sharing documents, not theories, Noor said evenly. Ms. Lynn asked me to start with my intention. I inhaled until the old knee buzzed, then said, I want safety, acknowledgement of deliberate harm, and an end to a story that calls me clumsy. Dylan smirked. That's a lot of big words for a little bruise. I clicked the tablet. The screen filled with the crosswalk photo from the reunion, then the adjuster note with bet you can't, underlined twice, then the detention slip date stamped 2 days prior. This is out of context, he said, voice still smooth. Here is more context, I said, and hit play on the Twitch clip as the banner rolled. $50 if he beats the light. Ms. Lynn's pen paused. In the glass wall, I watched his reflection blink. Deepfakes are everywhere, he said. Noor slid the metadata page forward. Patel hummed approval like a tuning fork finding pitch. We cued Ms. Alvarez's statement, Teresa's receipt paper note, Mariah's intake margin. Peer pressure? Dylan's smile stuttered for the first time like a buffering video. Boys, Aunt Mara began, voice trembling into old choreography. We were boys. Ms. Lynn nodded gravely. And now you're not, she said. Then Mr. Jameson's Zoom window connected, and he cleared his throat deliberately. Evening, Mr. Jameson said, peering over reading glasses like they were a moral instrument. Ms. Lynn summarized the purpose of his presence. Then I asked if he'd read the note he'd emailed. He unfolded the printout like it was fragile. Detention assigned for wagering on crosswalk sprints, he read. Names listed, Dylan H., Brett S., Marco L. He swallowed. 2 days before Alex's incident. Dylan laughed thinly. Candy bars, he said. We were betting candy bars. Mr. Jameson tapped the paper. The candy bar line was mine. The truth is I confiscated $40. Silence took a chair. Ms. Lynn asked Dylan to respond to the pattern of evidence. Texts, notes, payout screenshot, video. He leaned forward, palms open. I never meant for anyone to get hurt, he said, which is a confession wearing a wig. Intent is established by action and repetition. Patel said mildly, eyes still on the pad. I advanced to the PayPal history Noor had extracted, payments labeled, pool, bets, and week of. LR bonus, $3.80. 72. That could be anything, Aunt Mara said. Nor pulled up the cached forum where M. Kitty King bragged about harmless thrills, then a browser tab with old brand registry showing M. Kitty King linked to a defunct marketing LLC once registered to Dylan's dorm address. He swallowed and smiled wider. This is a witch hunt, he said. Alex hated me in high school. I wanted to be unhurt, I said, voice steady enough to surprise me again. Ms. Lynn pivoted to impact. Alex, she said, name the specific harms. I read the list. Medical bills, totals, dates, PT sessions, 34, missed track season, scholarship denials, extra jobs, knee braces, rent extensions, the narrative cost, the way my family held me like a spoiled egg while praising him for balance. And what are you requesting for repair? She asked. I requested written acknowledgement of intent, reimbursement indexed to inflation, a public correction at a family gathering, and a commitment to submit a sworn statement to the police amending the original account. Dylan barked a laugh. You think I'm signing something? Patel slid a prepared document forward, simple, specific, sober. You can also decline, she said. But understand there's a copy of this file that will accompany a criminal complaint for reckless endangerment and fraud. He stared at the paper like it had fangs. You'd ruin me, he whispered. The projector hummed. You did that, Nurse said softly, when you made near death a content strategy. Dylan reached for the pen, then flung it away and started to shout. He stood so fast his chair skidded, plastic shriek echoing off glass. This is extortion, he yelled, pointing at Patel, at Noor, at me. Ms. Lynn raised her hand, calm as a metronome. Pause, she said, and the room obeyed except for his breathing. Aunt Mara's face was a storm over water. She looked at me like I was pushing the chair now. Baby, she told Dylan, don't sign anything. He made a show of leaving, then hovered at the door. There's no stage if the audience can't see you. Patel collected the papers with a slow dignity that suggests inevitability. We will proceed through appropriate channels, she said, standing. Aunt Mara hissed, you'll destroy our family. He already made that choice, I said, surprised by the quiet in my voice. We filed a supplemental report the next morning. Patel attached our packet. Ms. Alvarez agreed to append her statement. Mr. Jameson sent a notarized copy of his detention note. The detective I met, Ruiz, compact and unsentimental, said, this is ugly, not unsolvable. Municipal wheels turn like molasses and razors. Meanwhile, consequences found Dylan faster than law did. The real estate friend, now less friendly, texted me a screenshot. Dylan's startup Slack exploding with, is this true? And we need to talk. A sponsor quietly pulled a brand deal. A campus group removed him from a panel. He posted a Notes app apology that said, sorry if anyone felt unsafe, which is the apology you make when you think words are gauze. Noor and I sent the actual corrections to our family chat, the addendum filing number, the timeline, the acknowledgement that the shove was deliberate. Half the cousins lurked. One uncle called me dramatic. My mother texted, I'm proud of you, but scared. I didn't sleep much. The hospital server room felt louder, and once, when the badge reader failed on a crash cart, my hands shook so hard I had to breathe on the floor tiles until my palms stopped buzzing. Dylan called at 2 a.m. from an unknown number and whispered, you win, then hung up so he didn't have to mean it. Days later, Ruiz updated us. The DA declined criminal charges, statute issues, evidentiary thresholds, but the city attorney was exploring civil penalties related to reckless conduct and fraudulent filings. Patel had already drafted our civil complaint. It was not revenge, it was a spring cleaning with receipts. Then Aunt Mara called my mother, crying, and asked to meet us alone. We met at a coffee shop that tries to look like an apology. Plants, reclaimed wood, the smell of oat milk sermons. Aunt Mara arrived with a tissue already in her hand, eyes raw. My mother's jaw had its own weather system. I didn't know, Mara said. I truly didn't. She looked so small I wanted to believe her, but wanting is not evidence. You rehearsed a sentence for years, I said, and watched the words land. She nodded. I thought if we told it that way, it would stay that way. She asked what I wanted. I told her I wasn't there to negotiate a discount on the truth. There are conditions, I said. 1. Dylan submits a written, notarized acknowledgement that the shove was deliberate and financially motivated by wagers. 2. He reimburses costs defined in Patel's schedule, medical, wage loss, therapy, indexed to present dollars. 3. He makes a public correction at the next family gathering, recorded for the record. 4. We establish strict boundaries. No contact unless mediated, no jokes about clumsy Alex, no minimizing. My mother squeezed my knee under the table. The old ache hummed like a distant transformer. Mara nodded slowly, then asked, "And if he refuses?" "Then we stop asking nicely," I said, "and we keep the legal record clean." Therapy started the same week. 8 Tuesdays in a room with a rug that looked like it gave good advice. My therapist taught me to name adrenaline when it wore nostalgia's face, and to let my body finish the sprint it started 14 years ago. I learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with conditions. I started running again, small loops at dawn, knee braced, breath loud and honest. Nor sent me safety plans like love notes, snapshots of flash drives in separate places, a list of who to call if harassment resumed, a script for disengaging at gatherings. The settlement negotiation crawled. Patel said crawling is safer than sprinting. Dylan, through a lawyer who writes like marble statues, offered partial reimbursement and a regret statement, with verbs in the passive voice. We declined. He blinked first. He signed everything within a month. I cried anyway because justice is heavy even when it's yours. The family group chat pinged with our next gathering, and I felt my heartbeat quicken. The gathering wasn't a party. It was a weather report delivered indoors. People arrived bearing salads and questions they pretended were Tupperware lids. I stood by the window like a fire drill captain and watched Dylan practice a neutral face. Ms. Lynn, invited as a neutral observer, sat near the mantel, and Patel positioned a phone on a small tripod like a mirror that tells the truth. My mother squeezed my shoulder, nor handed me a folded card that said, "Breath in, 4, hold, 4, out, 6. I nodded and unfolded the version of myself that knows how to speak into a crack without falling in. Dylan read his statement, voice flatter than his hairstyles. I pushed Alex into the street as part of a dare that involved wagers. I minimized it, lied about it, and benefited from it. I am acknowledging harm. He swallowed the rest of the sentence, then forced it out, and intent. He looked at me, then at the floor, then at the fixations that had kept him safe, his mother's hands, his reputation's scaffolding, the idea that boys are stories that can be rewritten by volume alone. The room made a sound that wasn't clapping. It was relief holding its breath. Then I spoke because justice isn't just subtraction. It's addition, new rules, new expectations, new exits. My advice, I said, to the cousins who will inherit our furniture and our silences, is write things down. Dates, amounts, what was said, who stood where. Save emails. Ask clerks for policies. Photograph receipts. Name feelings like witnesses. If someone tells you you're dramatic, ask them to sign their version. Safety first, narrative second. After pizza, I stepped outside. The evening smelled like wet brick and lilacs. I jogged to the corner and stood at a crosswalk under a patient light. It changed, and I walked. No rush, no dare, no scoreboard. The knee ached, honest and finite. I am not anti-forgiveness. I am pro-seatbelts. Dignity is a quiet house I'm still furnishing. If you've been shoved and told you tripped, know this. The ground remembers feet, and systems log everything if you learn where to look. Find a nor. Leave a breadcrumb. Back up the breadcrumb. And when the light turns, move because you choose to, not because someone dares.